You're watching WJZ-TV. This is Eyewitness News at 5.
A Baltimore family is outraged after a man convicted of sexually abusing the daughter is released from prison early. Good evening, everyone. Suzanne Collins spoke with the family and with the young abused victim, who is now just 12 years old. Suzanne?
And Sally, I'd like to warn some people they might find the subject matter of this story to be very sensitive. The girl was about 10 when she was involved in sexual intercourse with someone her family knew well. And she isn't the only victim. James Bolyard was convicted in 2 cases of sexual child abuse. What makes one victim's family so angry is that yesterday the judge released him early after he spent only 4 months in prison.
I just more or less want to know how that judge can lay his head down on his pillow every night and go to sleep, knowing that he left a man that destroyed my daughter walk on the streets. It is just so unfair.
Well, you think about it every day, every time you see a child her age, and you're thinking about it all day long when you're riding by yourself in a car or a truck like I do, and it eats at you. It's like cancer.
These parents say they are sickened by the judicial system and the decision of a Baltimore County judge to let James Bolyard out of jail after such a short time. He was convicted of sexually abusing their daughter.
He tried to get me. He tried to have sex with me. He said that if I told anybody, he was going to kill me.
Bolyard was charged with 18 counts, including rape, but a plea bargain was made in which he admitted guilt to sexual child abuse in the case of both young girls. Baltimore County Judge John Turnbull gave him a 5-year sentence, but suspended all but a year in jail. And then yesterday, after just 4 months behind bars, the judge decided to let Bolyard go early. We wanted to know what Judge Turnbull's reasoning was for letting Bolyard out after just 4 months in a work release program. But when we called his office, they said he never comments on cases unless it's in the courtroom.
The man should have been incarcerated for at least 5 years. This is a criminal offense. This is a child that was under 10 years old when it happened. And her body inwards is messed up and her mind is messed up for perhaps the rest of her life. And this guy walks the street just like any other bum.
I think it's wrong because he should be in there for 1 whole year like he promised, like Judge Turnbull promised.
And the judge, to me, just sat there and said that it's okay for a man to go out and do anything he wants to a little girl because he's only going to have to serve 4 months, and that is dead wrong.
Now, we did try to reach James Bolyard for his comment, and we did reach a family member, but he did not call us back. By the way, that 4 months behind bars that he spent, that was at night and on weekends because he was allowed out on work release during that time, Sally.
It does, to a layman, sound like very little time for such a serious crime, Suzanne.
Well, we wanted to find out just how unusual that was,
right.
So I called People Against Child Abuse, a lobbying group in Annapolis, and they told me they follow cases and that this is not at all unusual. The woman who's in charge of that group cited a case in Montgomery County where a gentleman, he admitted he'd actually raped a child and he only served 1 day in prison.
1 day? Thanks, Suzanne. A former Catholic school teacher accused of sexually abusing students 20 years ago is now facing 2 more lawsuits. The multi-million-dollar suits were filed against John Merzbacher, who taught at South Baltimore's Catholic Community Middle School. The suits come 9 days before a Baltimore judge will decide whether to dismiss 10 other suits against Merzbacher. His attorneys say the suits were filed after the statute of limitations had lapsed. Merzbacher denies all the allegations. Tonight, we have a follow-up report on a Ruxton woman missing for almost a month now. Susan Harrison's late model Saab convertible was found today in a parking lot at Washington's National Airport. Airport officials say it's been there since August 6th, the day after she disappeared. Baltimore County Police are checking flight lists.
A credit card, because we've been tracing the credit cards and we haven't had any hit on that. If she paid cash and wanted to disappear, then of course it's very unlikely she would have used her own name. So I doubt if we're going to find anything there, but detectives are searching nonetheless.
Police say there are no signs of violence in the car, but they still suspect foul play in Susan Harrison's disappearance. It was just yesterday a grand jury refused to indict a city police officer in connection with the death of George Hite. Hite suffered head injuries when he was arrested in June. Police say he fell down. Witnesses charged police deliberately tripped him. After 2 months in a coma, Hite died. This morning, the Baltimore City Medical Examiner's Office released an autopsy report listing the cause of death as homicide. Hite's sister wants to know why a grand jury would not indict when the word homicide is attached to the case in the first place.
it was a shock. To see that word, that's... I just couldn't believe that when I see that word on a report, on the medical examiner's report, that the grand jury wouldn't come back with an indictment.
Our resident lawyer, Dick Gelfman, joins us now to talk about this apparent inconsistency, Dick.
Yeah, you know, I think the average person thinks when you talk about a homicide, you think about murder. I mean, most people, we even have a show on called, homicide. People think murder. Well,
that's wrong?
It really is wrong. Let's take a look at the definition of what a homicide is. A homicide is simply the killing of one human being, by or at the hands of another human being. There's nothing in that definition that talks about culpability. It doesn't say the wrongful kill. Let me give you an example, Sal. Let's say you've got a police officer walking down the street. Somebody comes at the police officer, pulls a gun. Okay? The officer ducks. They shoot once or twice. The officer continues to duck. Finally, the police officer pulls out a gun and shoots, and he kills the person. That's a homicide. The police officer committed a homicide in that situation. Mm-hmm. Is it culpable? No, it's not. It's a justifiable homicide or it's self-defense. Mm-hmm. We talked to the medical examiner today, and he said that's what he meant by using the word homicide. What he was saying was, look, I'm not making the decision whether it's culpable or not. All I'm saying is it's a death that occurred at the hands of another human being. It's up to the state's attorney to determine whether he wants to prosecute this. It was, though, a homicide as opposed to a death by natural causes.
So the bottom line here is that calling his death a homicide is not inconsistent with the finding of the grand jury.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. And that's a very difficult thing for the family to accept because, they lost an individual as a result of this altercation with a police officer and believe they don't really, at this point, I just spoke to them a few minutes ago, they don't really understand the reason why. But the grand jury finding and the medical examiner finding are not inherently inconsistent.
Okay, since you just talked to the family, can you tell us what their plans are?
Well, lawsuit is not out of the question. They don't want to commit to it at this point, but they're hoping to wait to see what the feds do, the Department of Justice, and they're waiting to see the internal investigation, and then they're going to make a decision at that time.
This story is not over.
Yeah, far from it.
Thanks, Dick.
You're welcome.
By the time a high-speed car chase through Columbia was over last night, 2 Howard County police officers were injured and 7 juveniles were arrested. It all started when a man saw several teens stealing his neighbor's Acura and called police. The suspects took off in that car and a minivan stolen from the city. During the chase, the car struck a tree and 2 police cruisers. The youngest juvenile in the case is just 11 years old. Ron Matz has reaction from the police and the Columbia neighborhood. He's in Edit Booth 13 working on the story for 6, but he's going to give us a preview. Ron?
Well, that's right, Sally. Last night in the village of Long Reach, a woman lost her Acura Legend to car thieves, as you mentioned, who then led Howard County Police on a chase. These particular thieves were juveniles ranging in age from 11 years old to 17. Even Howard County Police tell me they're surprised by just how young car thieves are getting these days. I'm working with editor Julie Alex Salza on that story right now, and we'll have that story for you tonight on Eyewitness News at 6.
Ron and Judy, thanks. Teamwork made for a very productive day in West Baltimore today as police joined forces with residents to rid their community of drugs. Stan Saunders is standing by live with more. Hi, Stan.
Hi, Sally. It's real peaceful and quiet here, the way neighbors really like for it to be all of the time. I can tell you, however, that this was just not an ordinary drug bust earlier today, where police run surveillance, obtain warrants, then make their move. The key this time around was residents. Residents working directly with police to hopefully help rid their neighborhood of drug activity and all the violence associated with it.
And I'm glad, and I don't care what nobody say, I'm glad.
That opinion speaks for many neighbors who live in the 1800 block of Edding Avenue and surrounding blocks. Today, a 6-week-long drug trafficking investigation ended with the arrest of 9 suspects.
It's wrong, you know what I'm saying? Get a job, I gotta work, let everybody else work.
In the past 2 weeks, 50 more quieter arrests had been made as part of this same drug sweep. James Taylor lives next door to one house raided by police today.
I knew it was cheating drugs. I knew it was selling drugs. And what can I say, I live up 20-some years. They might throw a bum in there and throw me up.
7 handguns and 2 kilos of a controlled substance were recovered, along with $14,000 cash. Those targeted by police were described as mid-level street dealers.
Location 14, we have 1 female, we have 1 male.
The critical fact is that it's district-based, and we're going to be able to do a lot more of them, a lot more often, and make a lot more neighborhoods safe to be in. You can tell by the people on the street and the kind of comments that you get that they're real glad that we've been here.
For years now, many Baltimoreans have been hearing how they must take back their own neighborhoods and rescue it from the vice grip of drug activity and the violence associated with it. Well, today it happened, thanks to residents working directly with law enforcement.
What they're doing, they're going to the different public safety agencies, telling them, look, we're willing to work with you. We got to get these type of people out of our neighborhoods.
I told my wife, I said, come out, I said, they're going to get them. And that's been 2 weeks ago.
You said that 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
One footnote, Sally, this was the fourth high-profile drug bust since City Police Commissioner Thomas Frazier took office in January. Sal?
It's pretty impressive. Stan, are the cops saying that they got everybody they were looking for today?
Not quite. We just checked in moments ago before we hit the air live. They made 13 arrests today. That's the latest update. 7 men, 6 women. There are still 7 others that they're looking for, or make that 6 others that they're looking for. But you know, Central Police District is not far away, and the word from there is that this is the most heavily trafficked area in this Central District.
Thanks very much, Dan Saunders, reporting live from West Baltimore tonight.